Life Audio.
Hello, and welcome to the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. I am your host, John Seidel. This is your home for real stories, radical vulnerability, and remarkable comebacks. In the end, this podcast is a place for the desperate, the downtrodden, the destitute, and especially the drunk. But it's also a place of hope and healing. I know that firsthand because I'm the Christian who became an alcoholic, not the other way around. Today, I've found sobriety after decades of struggling. But more importantly than finding sobriety, I found Jesus. My prayer is that as I interview people just like you and just like me, along with professionals in the fields of trauma, faith, and addiction recovery, you will find the peace that is available to you through Christ on the other side of whatever you're going through and whatever addiction that might be. Because let's face it, we're all addicted to something. So welcome. Let's get radically vulnerable as we explore what it looks like to be on this journey of messy sanctification. So before I get to introducing this week's guest, I just want to say I am so thankful for you listening here. We have exceeded 20,000 downloads in, I originally had said our first 5 episodes, was actually our first 4 episodes. And I am just so thankful for all of you for listening. And I've gotten so many emails of people who say, hey, I found you on accident, wasn't really searching for a sober podcast. And I'm so encouraged by what I'm hearing. Some people who are spouses of people who struggle, which is actually a heart that I really have for those type of people. And in fact, in talking to my wife, she's been encouraging this, and it's a great idea, is I'm working on an episode just with spouses of people who struggle with addiction. And so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to be recording that with several spouses, including my wife. But I'm just so thankful. So thank you for listening, downloading. If you could go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen and rate the show, that would really go a long way into getting this into the hands of people who are new, who need it. So just wanted to take care of that little nugget of gratitude. So today we have on the show a mom of 4 kids. Her name is Kristi Tanner, and she has a really emotional story. There's going to be several tears shed during this interview. Kristi lives in Wisconsin, which is where I'm from, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And not just because I love Wisconsin, even though I live in Texas now, but because Wisconsin is such a huge ground zero for misordered relationships with alcohol. It's the number 1 drunkest state in the union. And so we're going to talk about a little bit about that, but why that is so important as well is because Kristi has opened the first sober bottle shop in the state of Wisconsin, and it's called Sober Social. And so she's going to talk about that, as well as her Instagram account, where she does a lot of great sobriety content, Mocktail Mommy. And Kristi is one of those stories where, for her drinking started in college, and it just spiraled from there to the point where she got 2 DUIs in 3 days. One of them, the story she tells on the podcast here, is just like, wow. But I also want to warn you, she also talks about her failed marriage, and there's some difficult conversations there, some talk about abuse, as well as just being really open, honest, and vulnerable about what she has gone through in finding sobriety. I think the conversation too, though, that we have is that sobriety isn't the end-all be-all, and she talks about that a little bit as well. So I think this is a really important conversation. I think especially if you're a woman or a mom, this is one that you're going to want to listen to the whole thing through. So without further ado, Kristi Tanner, the Mocktail Mommy. Kristi, thank you so much for joining the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. I love to bring people on with a variety of backgrounds and variety of experiences. And so I'm excited to talk to you today. I'm equally as excited because you are from, well, I shouldn't say from because we had a conversation before we got on here, but you currently live in God's country. Although as we're recording this, it's winter, and Wisconsin in the winter is not that great. I would just say. But you live in Wisconsin. You actually have this cool like sober drink shop that I want to talk about because you and I were joking before we came on, like when I tried to quit a couple times ago, I bought this like what was supposed to be this gin alternative, and it was like, I think it was some Instagram ad, and it got me, and I'm like, oh, this will be great. And then I drank, and it was like pine cone flavored bathwater, and it was awful.
And it was probably $45 too.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm like, this is like just as expensive or more expensive.
100%.
I could get a cheap bottle of gin, the real thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So I'm excited to talk about that, but I first want to talk about your story. So why don't you just introduce yourself? You have a great Instagram account. So why don't you introduce yourself before we get going?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for letting me just be me and off the cuff and unplanned. So here we go.
The best way.
Right. Yes. So my name is Kristi Tanner. I am the owner of Sober Social, which is the first non-alcoholic bottle shop in the state of Wisconsin. I opened the shop on my 5 years sober, which was last summer. I am also a single mom of 4 children. They are currently 11, 10, 8, and 6. I got sober and divorced at the same time, 9 months before the pandemic hit.
Oh, wow.
And then I was a mom to 4 under 6 with 9 months sober, moving into a new house. The pandemic hit, getting a divorce, and feeling like, wow, I'm not sure if I can do this. This is like all the house of cards has fallen. And I realized, I was going to have to do a lot of work, and the happy ending is I have. But yeah, so I would say if I can just like tell you a little about my story.
Yeah, well, first of all, before we do that, you said something interesting that I want to press into. And I've had a couple people from Wisconsin on, and I like to say this because it actually helps, I think, people understand my story better. And when they read my book, I think they'll understand it as well. As like, what is the drinking culture like in Wisconsin? Like you said, you opened the first sober bottle shop in Wisconsin, right? That's a huge thing. Like, I don't think people realize that. What is the drinking culture like in Wisconsin?
Sure. That is the culture.
Yeah. Oh, bingo, mic drop.
That drinking is the culture here. And we are the number 1 highest drinking state in the United States. Of the top 50 drunkest states in the United States, 41 of them are in Wisconsin.
The drunkest counties.
Drunkest counties, sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
41 are in Wisconsin. So the bar to human ratio in most states is something like 1 bar for every 3,500 people. And in Wisconsin, it's more like 1 bar for every 300 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So drinking is the culture. It's at kids' baseball games on the sidelines. It's mom's day out at church. They've got mimosas.
Yes. I told people that there was like, beer trailers at church picnics, and they thought I was like exaggerating. I'm like, nope. I'm not exaggerating.
I'm telling you, like, it's really hard for me to think of a space that alcohol has not sort of permeated its way into. It's at school fundraisers. It's how fundraisers make their money.
Absolutely. If you didn't have it, you wouldn't have. Exactly.
And what do people say, like, when they go into fundraising thinking, right? They're like, we want to be pouring lots of drinks so that people open up their wallets and make choices that they would not otherwise make if they were clear-headed.
Yeah.
That's just not good vibes. That's a hard no for me. But that's just true about like culture. And I think society has just like let it become okay. And so drinking is the culture. And when I moved here, I thought that I had enough information about what alcohol was and how my relationship was with it.
Were you sober yet when you moved to Wisconsin?
No.
Okay.
So when I moved to Wisconsin, I had been to rehab once before. I went the summer of 2017. I had 3 kids under 3.5, and one was born with a birth defect, and our marriage was on the rocks, and my husband traveled a ton, and I was alone in the suburbs of Chicago instead of the city and feeling pretty isolated.
Yeah.
And my drinking went to places that it had never gone before, and I ended up in the hospital a handful of times, doing medical detox. And at one point, it got bad enough that my husband said, you really need to go to rehab. And I went, but I went because he told me to go, not because I thought I needed to
It's a
go.
great distinction. It's a great thing to talk about. Yep.
That is the distinction between why my first rehab did not work and why my second rehab did, was because I chose it. I chose it. I was not forced to go. I was not doing it for someone else. I surrendered that I truly was an alcoholic that could not control my alcohol consumption. My life had become unmanageable, and I did not know what to do. And I couldn't manage my household and my small children and my marriage that was falling apart and this new home that we just had. I couldn't manage all of that and get sober. But I tried really hard because I wanted to hold on to that champagne glass until the end, because I was like, you take away anything you want. I'll go on a diet. I'll start meditating. I'll do anything else, but please don't make me give up the alcohol. It feels like safety. It feels like escape. It feels like relaxation. It feels like the only reliable thing that I have in my life right now, the only thing that I can rely on, the only relationship that I have in my life right now that I have 100% reliability on is my relationship with alcohol. And I can count on it every time to make my reality not seem so real.
There it is. It's the escapism, right?
Absolutely. It was too much, too big, too many moving parts, too many small people, too much time with perhaps the wrong person, too big of an investment, too much to look at. And so I didn't want to look at any of it.
So okay, so that's kind of the brief overview. Take us back to the beginning, right?
Sure.
Take us back to when, as early as you want to go, but take us back to the beginning.
I had my parents have a very normal relationship with alcohol. I think my dad drinks kind of a lot now, but he's retired. He's, golfing and playing pickleball, and he's done the work, and he stays sober when I'm around, and he's absolutely able to control it, which is a huge distinction from what I can and cannot do. But growing up, I grew up in sort of an affluent, upper middle class family. I had a younger brother. My dad worked really hard. My mom stayed home with us. And sort of every night, my parents' wind down time included a bottle of wine and sitting out on the front porch listening to jazz music in Kansas, and all the other neighbors would be walking their dogs, and then they would stop by for a glass of wine, and
like a Norman Rockwell painting.
100%. Okay, legit it was. And it was amazing. And so I saw what I thought I saw was my parents connecting over alcohol. Right? And that alcohol brought friends together, and this was fun, and this was a way to get people together, and this is what they did to relax when they were off the clock from parenting, and they were done doing the driving. And I thought I was watching them celebrate alcohol, but, they didn't drink the way that I do. They could split a bottle of wine and that would be it.
Yeah.
What? No.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. So anyway, I grew up sort of around a lot of alcohol. My parents are entertainers. We had a lot of parties. It was always there. I never really worried about it. there wasn't a lot of like exposure to any bad consequences to it. No one really talked about alcohol consumption. Then I get to high school. I'm in Kansas. I decided to try drinking on New Year's Eve because some boy says, I don't think that you can handle it. That's why you're not drinking. And I was like, oh my gosh, let me show you I can handle all the things. Here I go, handling my alcohol. Yeah, no, fail, epic fail. Did not handle it. Threw up everywhere. My parents had to come get me. I was so embarrassed that basically I didn't drink for the rest of high school. So it had a consequence and huge effect on me the first time.
Which I think I want to point that out because I think, and everyone's story is different, right? And there's people who are listening to this right now where your story was you tried it for the first time as a freshman in high school and like, bam, that was it, right? But your story is actually my story. I got drunk for the first time at 13 and I did not get drunk again. I drank periodically, you know, with parents or at a family events or whatever, but I didn't abuse alcohol or get drunk again until I was like 21, you know, because I was scared. It scared me when I got drunk the first time. And so like, if you're listening to this, your story of your misordered relationship with alcohol doesn't have to start with, well, I drank it once and then that was it. You know, and I want to encourage people, like we all enter very differently. And so I think I love that for you. Like it kind of mirrored mine as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was like I was terrified because I had done things the next day that I had never done before, right? Like I had thrown up, I had embarrassed myself. Like I didn't follow through on a promise that I made. I wasn't the sober driver that I always was. And I realized I really liked doing those things. I ruined my parents' night, you know, just all these things. And I'm like, I don't want to do that again. However, you know, it's like you go off to college and I'm like, oh my God, no parents, girls gone wild. This is incredible, right? Like now I'm allowed to like go party, whatever that means. Well, nobody told me it shouldn't be every single night. So I drank every single night. I went to Miami of Ohio. It was a big party school. I was in Greek life. I was always at a party with people. And my drinking, I was a bartender. I loved it. I blacked out regularly. I mean, multiple times a week. But I got straight A's. I never missed class. I maintained great friendships. I had a boyfriend. I had a part-time job. Like life was lifing. So I thought, you know, this is a time in my life when you're allowed to do this and I get to do this. And so I'm doing this. The problem became that like when I graduated college, I didn't change my relationship with alcohol at all. I changed what I drank, but it never decreased the amount. So I went from partying in college straight to working in downtown Chicago. And I would go out to happy hour. And so I'm no longer drinking, you know, Miller Lite, you know, out of a 40 for $3 out of a paper bag. You know, now I'm drinking Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc because like I'm so classy.
Right.
And sophisticated. And this is what sophisticated, successful, classy people do. They go sit together with other sophisticated, successful, classy people and they talk about the weather. It's shockingly deep and it's just amazing connection. No.
Yeah. It's so funny because I remember when I was living in New York City, you know, when my drinking started picking up for like the first time. And you know, happy hour is a thing, but at least in New York, there was actually like, it was not only approved of, but it was expected that like, if you went out to lunch, you would drink. The sophisticated people had a drink with lunch, you know, and all the people in their suits in Midtown and wherever, like you would have a drink with lunch. You know, and it's just so funny how, you know, we talk about like, well, why are so many people realizing that their relationship with alcohol is not where it should be? And I think part of that is we're partly waking up to what the alcohol industry has told us is the definition of success and what looking successful is like. And that includes going to happy hour or getting drinks at lunch, right? And so you talking about that, I think it's a great example.
It's really great marketing. It's really great. Big alcohol has done really great marketing. They've made it glamorous and sexy. We've romanticized it. It's the entrance to love, to connection, to friendship, to celebration, to everything, right?
Yeah.
To relaxation. Like it's the entrance to all the good things. But what they didn't tell you is that it's also poison and it causes cancer and it's addictive and it will actually take away everything in your life from you that matters if you do not stop, and you need to stop, right?
Yeah.
If you have a problematic, addictive personality, I could get addicted to anything. I could get addicted to jelly beans. I know this about myself. And, but we've glamorized it in a way that it's like, oh, it's okay. That drug is not titled drug, it's alcohol. So that's different. Alcohol is a drug. Alcohol is a drug. And I think in, 10 years from now, I think big alcohol is going to be like big tobacco. And there's going to be this sort of seismic shift into the science behind what alcohol actually does to our bodies, our brains, and our ability to make the choices that we authentically want to be making.
So can I interrupt you and I ask you this question before I lose it in my mind? I'm so sorry because I want to get back to your story, but I think with what you're saying, maybe there's someone listening to this and they're like, listen, you guys in the sober community, if you can't handle it and you have addictive personalities, fine. Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't drink, but stop trying to take away my alcohol as someone who can handle it. Like, why do you have to bash alcohol? Is this bad? Like, I'm not the one that has a problem with it. You do, and now you don't want anyone to have it.
That's right. There is a lot of pushback. There is a lot of pushback. And here's what I say to that. Like, I'm not saying you can't have any alcohol, but I want to tell you why I can't, right? And what I know to be true about me and what I've known to be true about a lot of people that I know and love and care about in this community. And I think the reality is that if we slow down and take away sort of the noise and the glamour and the marketing, and we look at science, it tells a very different story. We make such mindful choices all day. What do we consume on social media? What do we feed our children? How much parenting is good parenting? We are so cognizant and thoughtful and about all these things in our life. How much exercise? How much sleep? Are you tracking it? Are you drinking enough water? Are you reading 10 pages a day? All these things. But what we don't talk about is like, what are we doing to ourselves that's just like socially acceptable that isn't actually helping us live a healthy, wellness-focused lifestyle? So here's what I say to that, right? Like, people are allowed to make their own choices. And I'm not here to shame alcohol, but I think that it should be noted for what it is. And it is a toxic poison. And it causes our bodies to have consequences. And my fear is there's a lot of buildup of consequences in people over time, over the use or abuse of alcohol over time, right? That we don't have the full picture of, because we weren't drinking like we do today. We weren't drinking like that 80 years ago.
Are you saying more of like the binge drinking type?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what does that do to our bodies? I don't know. So like I would just, it's like to each their own. But I think what I like to say, like as a bottle shop owner, is you don't have a full bar unless you have a non-alcoholic option. So if you want to have a full bar, have a full bar. But have a full bar.
Interesting. Yeah.
Have a full bar. Give me my option to be a part of the situation, to be included in the event, to have the accoutrements on the drink and the yummy, sophisticated tasting, beautiful looking glass like everyone else. But let me have it without alcohol. I want to be a part of. I don't want to be excluded. I want to connect in this way. I want to socialize. And I don't think that there needs to be drinking or no drinking. I think there's a lot of people that are able to drink normally. I'm just not one of them. There's a lot of people who can eat gluten, but there's some that can't. It's like that. And I think what it requires is true self-awareness to be like, who am I and where do I fit on that spectrum? Do I find myself making myself promises and breaking them? Do I find myself wishing that I was drinking less and feeling ashamed the next day? Do I find myself saying I'm going to have two, but ending up justifying a third for whatever reason? How is it supporting me? Is alcohol positively affecting my life? How does consuming alcohol positively affect me? I think it would be like sort of hard for me at this, I mean, now I'm 5 years sober, but like it'd be hard for me to answer that.
Yeah.
And at the end of my drinking, alcohol wasn't positively affecting me at all.
We'll be right back after this. So that's maybe a good segue back into your story, because I think what's interesting is for those of us who start to abuse it, and I'm catching myself here because I think everyone has a different story, but it's interesting that from the beginning you were all out, right? After being reticent for a little bit, you know, and so bring us back there. Like, so, okay, so you're in college, you know, but then you graduate to sophisticated drinking in Chicago. And then where do things start getting?
Yeah. You know, I was able to manage it for a long time. I figured out rules that sort of worked for me. I drank Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes on Sunday. But during the week was when I got all my real work done. You know, like I kind of came up with a system that worked until I became a mom. And when I became a mom, a lot of things changed. I think physiologically a lot was going on with my body. I'm breastfeeding.
I've heard this.
Weird. So it's like all of a sudden I'm a mom, I'm breastfeeding. I was sober for 9 months when I was pregnant, and I was so excited to be drinking again that I could. But then 6 months after I had my first baby, I had my second baby. And so, got pregnant with my second baby. So I had to stop drinking again. So like, when I stopped working and was then home with 2 kids, I found myself starting to use alcohol like a friend. If I didn't have a friend to talk to and I was feeling lonely or I was having a hard day or whatever, because my friends either, you know, still have a job or whatever the thing, I don't have someone to help me. And this is not like we don't raise kids as communities. We very much raise them on our own. And I think that I wish it wasn't so much that way.
Yeah, we've lost a part of that for sure.
Yeah, it's like we used to have neighborhood everything, you know, like it was community raising. And I very much found myself alone with 2 kids who were nonverbal. And I love talking to people and I'm very extroverted. And all of a sudden I'm home alone with 2 kids.
Yeah.
And so I would be like, well, it's going to be my happy hour. I know how to make it happy. The champagne is fun.
Yeah, right? It doesn't talk back either.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It agrees with me on everything.
Totally. So I think like motherhood really changed it. I think I had a third son, another 18 months later. So I had 3 boys under 3.5. And my marriage was not in a good place at all. And so, like I said, I ended up in rehab, but my now ex-husband, you know, told me I had to go. And so I did go. And I was
what was it that he was seeing that he was like, I think you need to go to rehab?
So my drinking for a long time was like nighttime drinking, right? Like after 6 or once the kids were in bed or whatever. But as I became a stay-at-home mom, the drinking started earlier and earlier. And then the more kids and the more responsibility that I had, I drank more and more to relax because I had so much to worry about.
Yeah.
So the drinking escalated. He would come home and be like, I can see that you've already like started drinking and it's 5:02, right? And what he didn't know at the time is like, I probably already had a bottle and started the second one. So what happened is it became very much like a part of my everyday. I thought about it all the time. I thought about when I could start, where I could hide it, who would know how much is acceptable. Where could I go and what could I do to make drinking look normal? And that's what I was willing to do, right? So I'm no longer living a life sort of that I want to be leading. I'm all of a sudden living a life where I'm allowed to drink without as much guilt. Because I know that my drinking is not good. I know that I black out almost every time that I drink. I know that I wake up covered in vomit sometimes. I know that I lose my cool and get angry and start yelling. I know that I've hurt people's feelings. I know that I've driven under the influence with my children in the car. These are things that I wasn't willing to tell anyone, right? I had a therapist. Do you think I was telling my therapist that I was driving under the influence with my children at 8 a.m. to go get more booze?
Duty to report. You'd have lost your kids, right? I mean, that's what happens.
That's exactly right. And
Which
so
I think, by the way, there's a book by someone looking at it right over here. Her name is Heather Kopp, and there's this scene she talks about. It's called Sober Mercy. She's in treatment, and she blurts out, like people are talking about, their histories and stuff, and she blurts out like, "I drove drunk with my kids," and someone looks at her just so matter of factly and was like, "Didn't we all?" And when what she explains is, what that woman was saying was not that we all necessarily drove drunk with our kids, but we all did that thing that we said we're never going to do that is so horrific.
we got to the yet. I've never done that yet. The yet was saving me from sobriety for so long. Well, I've never gotten a DUI. I've never had legal consequences. I've never been fired. I've never lost a blah, blah, blah. Yet. I've never it yet.
Exactly.
And everyone finds their yet. But I wasn't telling my therapist because exactly what you said, because I knew the consequences were astronomical, right? So then what do? I just kept doing it. It's insane. I mean, fast forward a little bit. I'm going to leave out part of my story that just is more about my marriage and not about drinking. But back to my drinking, after my fourth child was born, we had moved to Madison when I was like a year prior. And so I had been pregnant most of my time here. And 48 hours after my daughter was born, I went to a Halloween party in my neighborhood where I still live. And I showed up with 4 children under the age of 6 by myself as a new person in the neighborhood and proceeded to get blackout drunk with a 48-hour-old baby and 3 other children under the age of 6. And these people in this neighborhood are like, who is this woman? And like, where is her husband? And like, what is going on?
Wow.
I was dealing with so much stuff, or not dealing with so much stuff, that is how I chose to show up. And I got diagnosed with postpartum depression in January. And then I'm like, that's so weird that none of the, medicine is helping me. Well, gee, do you think it's because I'm drinking the entire time? Like, antidepressants don't work. SSRIs don't work well with alcohol. Benzodiazepines, not a great thing with alcohol.
Not a great mix.
Not
Can kill you.
Mix. Yep, it's fatal. So I was like, oh my God. Well, things got worse, right? Because I was already drinking and driving with my kids, and that didn't stop it. And then I got served separation papers, and that didn't stop it.
Had you been to rehab now already one time?
I went once for 30 days, and I went to California, but I went to like a super fancy place, and like I got we did equine therapy, and like I filled out a homework packet, and I was like, I aced that. Awesome. Totally aced that homework packet. I mean, it was like I treated it like mommy on vacay.
Yeah. Right.
I was like, I'm going to go get a tan. It's in California. I'm going to get like a 6-pack. I'm going to do sit-ups every day. Like, I was so checked out of like why I was supposed to be there that there's no way it could have worked. And I wouldn't recommend this specific program. So I find myself, kind of just like spiraling. None of these things have stopped my drinking. My husband is now like divorcing me. And I mean, everything is falling apart. And I know that most of it is my fault. And I'm very aware of that. But my drinking doesn't stop until I get not 1, but 2 DUIs within 72 hours, because that finally woke me up, because I was trying not to wake up. Right? I was ready to be done. I didn't want to do this anymore. It was all too hard. It was too much. I had made too many mistakes. Nobody could forgive me. I couldn't forgive me. Who was ever going to be able to love me? And I didn't want to deal with it. But I was on the phone with my best friend from college, who is a very strong Christian. And she says to me, Kristi, I need you to pull over. I know you're drinking and driving, and I need you to pull over. And I was like, lying to her. And I don't know what she said exactly, but finally I pulled over. And I parked my car exactly where I was and just started bawling. And it turns out I parked my car on the highway, not on the shoulder, actually on the highway. I parked my car on the highway and was sobbing just outside Gary, Indiana. Really exciting place to go to jail. And so it didn't take the cops a long time to find me with this parked car and a blacked out woman in the front seat. So they breathalyzed me. I blew a .24. Wow. And they took me to jail. And I thought, now I'm never going to see my kids again, but now I'm going to know it.
Wow.
And being in jail in Gary, Indiana, I was on the 5th floor. I was handcuffed to the wall. I was strip searched and fingerprinted and mugshot and threatened and harassed in this cell with 8 other women. I mean, it was it was awful. It was the worst 36 hours maybe ever. Wow. But that's what it took for me, because I couldn't stop. I couldn't make that choice. I couldn't admit what it had taken from me. I didn't want to face it. It seemed too hard.
Yeah.
My ex-husband did not come and get me from jail. He didn't answer the phone. And so I called my parents. And when you're 35 and calling your parents for the second time in a week to get you out of a different jail, I've never really seen a look like that off my dad's face. And I never want to again. I've never felt more disappointing or ashamed or broken. And that 5-hour drive home in the back of their car, I spent researching rehabs.
How come you were 5 hours away?
Oh, well, I got this brilliant idea since it was July 6th. Well, wait, July 5th was my second DUI. So I had got my first one on the evening of the 3rd. And then it was the 4th of July, right? And then that morning, the 5th of July, my ex-husband had left with my kids and left me home alone. And I was like, I am not going to be home alone on the 4th of July weekend when everyone else is partying. I know that I just got my first DUI and said I would never, ever, 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 ever drink again. But that was 2 days ago and I can't remember.
Yeah. By the way, isn't that so, like, people who are listening to this, like, you will know what that's like if you struggle, because how many times did I say the same thing? I did something stupid. I said something I shouldn't have. Whatever. I don't remember X. I'm never going to drink again. And never lasts about 12 hours.
It does, because the actual alcohol leaves your system around 72 hours after you're done drinking. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm cured. I can't remember. Right. I can't remember. I feel fine now.
Yep.
It's crazy, but it's not. It's science.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, like, what I hope people hear is that you're not like this.
There's nothing wrong with you.
This weird person that you're the only one who's ever committed to not drinking. And then within, 12, 24, 36 hours is like, but I'm good.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I mean, I admitted I have it's interesting. I have 2 dates on my arm. One is when I actually committed to sobriety, But 2 weeks before that, I admitted I was an alcoholic. I knew it. And yet, 2 weeks later, I'm in the ocean, up to my chest in water, wading in my own feces at 1 a.m. by myself on South Beach. And I'm like, what has my life become? Right?
Yep.
Like, but 2 weeks earlier, I admitted it. I knew it. And so, like, person who's listening, like, be encouraged. I think take encouragement that you're not the only one that this happens to. And so, okay, so you're in jail. You're researching rehabs on your way back, and you finally are like, I'm going for myself.
I'm going for myself. And I'll tell you that the first, I had to stay sober for 9 days at home by myself. And that was incredibly difficult. And I just want to put a plug that alcohol withdrawal can be fatal.
Yes.
So if you are a heavy regular drinker, it is really, really important to make sure that you do not stop cold turkey, and that if you need medical detox, that you go.
Which is something I've learned more, because I did quit cold turkey, and luckily there wasn't that. I did have withdrawal symptoms, but they weren't fatal. But yes, I'm so glad to hear you say that. That's a really good reminder.
Right? I didn't know that, and not enough people know that that can kill you. That can be what kills you, is not having it in your system and not being medically assisted through this part of the withdrawal. So anyway, I decided to go to rehab, and I find a rehab that will allow me to see my kids once a week, because that's what I decide I need.
Yeah.
And for the first month in rehab, I think I really wanted to be a really good rehab student, just like I want to be a good person everywhere I go, but like I want people to like me. And I find myself sort of mostly telling the whole story, but not quite the whole story. And there was an exercise that one of my therapists did with me after a really not good couples session with my now ex-husband. And I had been basically holding on to this idea that if I was going to get sober, we were going to save our marriage. Hello? Like, I'm 99% of the problem, and now I'm going to fix it. And so now we're going to fix the marriage, right? Like, or that I would get divorced and drink like I wanted to, because who was going to stop me?
Yeah.
John, never in my wildest dreams did I imagine getting divorced and choosing to stay sober. Never. Never once. And if you would have told me that's what's going to happen to you, I would have been like, I do not want that. No, thank you.
Yeah, right?
No, thank you.
I want to you said something there that I think is important, is that there's a lot of people who can't imagine themselves without alcohol. And you said this earlier. And I thought I was weird when I got sober, and I grieved not having it. And you used the term friend earlier, and I think that's how I would have used it too, because, and this, I didn't come up with this, and I know you've heard it, you probably said it, is like, alcohol wasn't my problem, it was the solution to my problems. And so alcohol was my friend that was always there for me. Like when I couldn't stop thinking, when my OCD and my anxiety were through the freaking roof, when I couldn't stop thinking about something my wife said, when, when I couldn't stop thinking about something my boss said, whatever, it was like alcohol was there to comfort me.
Absolutely.
And so I grieved it. And I remember talking to someone in early recovery, and they're like, why am I like, they felt so much shame. And I said, that's actually a very healthy thing. Like, you need to bury, like, have a funeral for it, like, grieve it. Yes, it was, it was your companion. Right. And so I heard you say that earlier, and some you just said there kind of reminded me of like, yeah, like you could have never imagined life without this friend. And if it was going to be without the friend, it was going to be, well, because this was met, or not this. Right. And yet here you are,
Yeah.
I just think that's so great.
It is, but it's, like on paper, it's nothing that I wanted. This did not go according to plan. Isn't that weird that like, it seems like there could be this guy upstairs who has like a different plan that I'm not totally aware of yet, that's maybe slightly better.
Funny
know.
how he does that. Yeah.
I don't know,
Right.
but yeah, so it's like I find myself sort of halfway through this rehab program, and I had initially said I'm going to go for 4 weeks, which is a normal stay, 28 days.
I think
And
there's a movie about that.
you should watch it. Sandra Bullock's in it, and she's amazing. And she's sober in real life.
I didn't really, it's funny. You don't realize how many people, and this is a good reminder too, how many people are sober.
So many cool people.
Yeah, once you start researching it, it's like Anthony Hopkins and Tom Holland and like all these people who are doing great things, you would look at them and say, there's no way they can be killing it. There's no way they can be enjoying life like they are without alcohol.
Right.
And they are.
Matthew McConaughey, sober.
Yeah.
Bradley
Yeah.
Cooper, sober.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I can't think of women apparently right now, but there's amazing women that are sober everywhere.
Drew Barrymore.
Yes, Drew Barrymore, Katy Perry. Like, there's lots of cool sober.
I didn't know that about Katie. See, it's like I learned something. That's so interesting.
She has a drink that's I carry in my store.
There you go. There you go.
Full circle moments.
So you get halfway. So you're like, I'm going to go 28.
I get halfway and basically the heads of the program are like trying to figure out how they're going to nicely break it to me that like staying married is not only not going to happen, but not a good idea. And I was pretty stubborn. It's weird. So they have this therapist and he does this assignment with me. And he says, at the time I had a 6-month-old daughter. I had 3 boys and then a girl. And he's like, I want you to write your daughter a letter. And I want you to write her this letter. And I want you to say, dear Sloan, this is what I hope for you in a partner and in a future and in your relationship. And these are all the qualities that I hope surround you. And these are the feelings that I hope you have being in a partnership. So I write this beautiful letter. And he's like, can you read it to me? So I read it to him and I'm all teary and I'm like, it's just like amazing to think about that, like her being with somebody amazing. And he's like, yes, isn't it? Perfect. Kristi, I'm going to need you to change the name and read it one more time. Except for now the letter says, Dear Kristi, these are all my hopes and dreams for you. And this is what I hope you have in a partnership and how it makes you feel. And I want you to read it to me, right? And so I can barely read it. And he says, after reading that, like, what of those things do you have in your marriage? And I said, none. I said, I have none of those. And coming to the realization that, like, I was not going to fight for my marriage anymore in the middle of rehab was really scary. Because I realized I was not going to be able to go home and go to my house and that life would in fact never be the same. Not that it ever can be the same as it was before, but like everything in my life would need to change. And that's not always true. Sometimes you delete alcohol and it allows the rest of your life to be relatively the same. But that wasn't true for me. I had to change everything in my life, every single thing. And I didn't want to, but I did it anyway. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to go home next week like I planned because I realized I'm not going to be able to stay at my home. A lot of things came clear to me. Like it was like this massive breakthrough. And once I realized that saving my marriage would in fact not solve these problems and that in fact that was part of the problem, that I had a lot more work to do and a lot of things to figure out about where I was going to go with my 4 kids.
We'll be right back after this. You can tell me to pound sand with this question, but I'm curious because I try to think of the people who are listening here. Was there types of like abuse or emotional abuse in your marriage that then were kind of contributing to some of this wanting to escape?
Of course. Yes. A lot of betrayal and gaslighting and a lot of confusing, isolating moments. But they happened so sort of slowly over time. And we were together for almost 13 years that it's kind of like trying to pin jelly to a wall. It's like, I don't know, where did it start? Did it start? Is that it? Is that okay?
Which is interesting you say that because I think sometimes like when I sat down to write, there's a chapter in my book where I talk about like, okay, I'm going to give you the history of my drinking. It was really hard because it was like, well, did it start here?
Totally.
Was that a false beginning? Was you know what I mean? Like, because there were times it was like it would peak and it would go down and peak. So where was the start of this, like, really unhealthy relationship? I think where I got to was like the start of my unhealthy relationship with alcohol was the first time I got drunk. Now, was I able to muscle through it in certain ways and at certain times and in certain periods and, this and that? Like, yeah, right? And so I think it's interesting you say that because I think that's the same way with our drinking a lot of times.
For sure.
Is where did that problem begin? And it's hard. I think we want to put it in an easy box, and maybe some people can, and that's fine. Like, I have nothing against you, but I just knew it was harder for me to pin it down than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. Did my drinking make the marriage worse, or did the marriage make my drinking worse?
Mm.
I mean, do we ever know? But yeah, like, was it healthy? And was it a healthy relationship? The answer is a hard no, right? And alcohol was my solution.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm in rehab and I'm like, I'm going to stay for another month. So I stay for another month. When I get home, I move out of my $1 million home into a 1-bedroom apartment, and we start doing something called nesting. So the kids stay at our house. I sort of come and go on my time. And so we're on a placement schedule. So every other 2 days, we're swapping off, and we have a nanny that's there the whole time. And then I'm either there overnight or he's there overnight, but we're not there together anymore. And I spent most of my time in my earliest sobriety days outside of rehab in AA meetings, planning AA meetings, writing in my journal, taking a bubble bath, going to yoga. Like, I am telling you, I full-time recovered for another 2 months. And I relied on my full-time nanny, which I know a lot of people can't have. And if I was now in my situation, I wouldn't be able to afford that, right? But like at that time, we could.
Hey, use what tools you have.
Absolutely use what you have, So I spent my time doing the work. I cried myself to sleep for 18 months, and that is not a joke, every single night. And I thought, my life is never going to get better. And it's going to be always this hard. And no one's ever going to be my friend again. And I'm never going to fall in love again. All these things. And there's a lot of things that are still very unknown, but I stayed sober because they say don't quit before the miracle. And you shouldn't, because there is one. So I moved into this home out of this apartment. Our divorce didn't get finalized for a long time, but I moved out. And I had my own home. And the day before I closed on my own home, the day after I closed on my own home, the pandemic was announced. And I had 4 children under 7, and I was 9 months sober, and I was relying 100% on AA meetings in person to keep me sober. And then all of that shut down, and I'm a brand new mom, single
mom, yeah.
Mom of 4 kids in a new home, with boxes everywhere. I mean, it was like, oh my God, how am I going to stay sober? It was so hard, but I did it. I stayed sober, and little by little, like, my life, I don't know, I got through it. I got divorced. It didn't work out great. We have a terrible relationship. He hasn't looked at or spoken to me since he filed, and we have 4 children together. So it's difficult. Sobriety doesn't solve life problems.
That's important, because I think even like a big premise of my book is, and what I talk about is, I don't want to worship sobriety, right? Because sobriety can disappoint, and like
solve life.
Right. Exactly. Like, I want Jesus, because if I go there, then I happen to get sobriety, and there's a lot better for me waiting there. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's important, because I think there are some people, and I've talked about this openly on the podcast, specifically with maybe some of the AA old hats and whatnot, that are like, well, if you're sober, at least you're sober, and like that's it, and it's like, like, there's more to life than just not doing something.
John, I did not put in the hardest work of my whole life to live a normal life, to get through the day. No, that doesn't excite me.
Yeah.
I got sober to live up to my potential, the highest potential, to live an absolutely extraordinary life. That's the life I got sober for. The one that I could not have when I was actively drinking. The life that I thought I saw somewhere else. The one I knew I could have somewhere in here. The one that I created. The one that wasn't forced upon me. Wasn't because I was X, Y, or Z, or in this box, or married or not married. One that I design because I'm me and I'm unique and I want to make an impact on this world, right? And it looked absolutely nothing like the dream that I was sold when I was 9, and that I would like fall in love and stay married forever and have a white picket fence and 2.5 children. Like this did not work out for me. And instead of being angry about it, which I was for a very long time, I choose to embrace it. Okay. Okay. You think it's crazy that I'm a single sober mom of 4 kids and I opened my own business without childcare last summer? The first one in the state. You think that's crazy? Me too. Isn't that nuts? How am I doing it? No idea. It depends on the day. Ask me. You know what I mean? I have no plan, but here's what I know. The things that I planned before, they were wrong. They didn't happen as I planned them, right? I am very much happier just being able to show up authentically myself. I have autonomy. I speak only the truth. I have this saying that helped keep me sober: keep no secrets, carry no shame.
Sounds a lot like a chapter of my book where I talk about radical vulnerability.
That is how I live my life every day. And it's shocking. It's shocking. It shocks people all the time. Like good ways.
Makes some people uncomfortable.
Well, it makes people very uncomfortable.
I have some of my family that it makes really uncomfortable.
I make a lot of people, it's funny, I make people comfortable on purpose, but the sheer existence of like my energy and aliveness and passion about sobriety is very affronting for some people. And it's like, whoa, are you allowed to like be that happy and excited about sobriety? Like, what is this? Is this a cult? Am I going to get it if you touch me? I don't think I want it yet, you know?
Especially in Wisconsin, they're like, I want to stay drinking.
100%. They're like, sorry, we were coming in. We thought it was a liquor store. I'm like, it is. It just has no alcohol. Welcome. Do you want samples?
So let me ask you this again, because I want to be faithful to your time. I'll end my final thing by saying this. You pointed out that it wasn't until you decided that you needed to get sober, right? You weren't doing it for everyone else. And I think my wife said something. I think there's a lot of people who have wondered, like, how did my wife go about for so long? Like, was she seeing it? And I would say she was seeing it. Now, I was hiding some of it, but she was seeing it. But her thing was, if you do it for me, it's not going to last, or it's just going to be something else, right?
Or it becomes resentment,
right? And so she was like, I needed to let him. And you know, from a faith perspective, let God deal with him and put it upon his heart. And I think it's interesting to see that from your perspective. Like, yeah, you went to rehab for someone else, didn't work. You finally went because it was something that internally happened, and then it worked. What is your piece of advice to the person who's listening to this, who hears your story and says, "That's me," and I know I want that. I want to get sober. I want what you have. But I don't know what to do. What do you say?
I would say to that person to find a person that you can be completely honest with and go be honest with them. I think the most powerful thing you can do is to actually ask for help when you need it. And a really important thing to ask yourself is what do I need? What do I need? If I need to stop drinking, what is going to help me stop drinking? Do I need to tell somebody that I need help stopping drinking? And if that's a scary step to take, go on Instagram. Please go on Instagram and look up, start with my page, Mocktail Mommy. I've sort of left this whole part out of my story, but when I was 89 days sober and struggling when I'm not with my kids and nesting and I'm not a mom all of a sudden for 2 days a week and I don't have a job and I'm just staying sober, it was really difficult. And I felt like I needed accountability. And I had burned all the bridges in my life with real people. And so I didn't have anywhere to get it. And so I started an Instagram account called Mocktail Mommy. And I basically said, hello world, my name is Kristi and I have a drinking problem and I'm going to talk about it here. And so if you see me drinking, that's a problem and I need you to tell someone because I'm not allowed to drink alcohol and I don't trust myself not to do that yet. And shockingly to me, I started getting messages on Instagram in my DMs of people saying me too. I feel that way too. I'm struggling too. I'm a mom too. Nobody knew. Nobody knows. I don't know what to do. Who can I tell? Where do I start? Well, you just did. You told me. Practicing with your words and identifying like what you need is the place to start. Write it down. If you're a journaler, write it down. If you have somebody that you love and trust, tell them. But you have to ask for help. And the most important thing to be is honest. I don't like the way I feel when I'm drinking. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I don't like the mom I am. I don't like the effects on my health. I make decisions I don't like, or I simply just don't like the fact that I can't stop drinking when I want to.
And I think what I want to encourage people is, I think part of the scariness there is if I tell someone, that means I literally have to stop immediately. And what I would say to people is, while
you won't stop immediately.
Yeah, like there's
it's okay.
Yeah, like it's okay to admit it, and then like you don't have to go cold turkey right away. I think that kept me for a long time. I'm like, I know I have a problem, but the moment I admit it, I'm not ready to say goodbye to my last drink.
About it. Yeah.
And so, I don't think I'm being crazy here, but listen, it's just start by saying it, right? And if it takes a little bit until that last drink, or you want to say like, hey, I'm going to have a funeral and I'm going to have my, like, whatever you want to do, right? But I think so many people have this thought that like the moment I tell someone is like, that's my last drink, and that's scary. Listen, you don't have to make all these decisions all at once. Just make the decision to tell someone. I've been working through, with someone in sobriety, and she goes for a while not drinking, and it's like, it's a process. It's a process.
And it should be, right? Growth is a process. Love is a process. Intimacy is a process. Like, this should be a process too. Like, something that you've relied on for however many years, you're not just going to drop it. But pre-contemplation and contemplation is telling somebody and getting ready to do something about it.
That's a great reminder. I forgot it. I did some sobriety training, and there's, this, I think it's the 5 stages.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? The 5 stages of recovery, right? And there's this pre-contemplation and contemplation stage that are the first 2 stages, right?
And you have to be there. Nobody gets sober without going through those stages. Nobody.
Yeah. It's a great reminder. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, great. I invite you to have a conversation with somebody about alcohol, an open, honest conversation about it. Have an open conversation about alcohol with somebody that you love and trust. Yeah. When do we do that?
In my pre-contemplation stage, I had those over drinks, and people, that might sound weird, but that's where it felt safe.
It did feel safe. And it does. I mean, other things like Annie Grace's The Alcohol Experiment, that's her second one. This Naked Mind is her first one. She even says, right? If you're drinking and reading this, that's very normal. You're in contemplation. I went through a 7-week online sobriety class, and I drank through the entire thing. I really wanted the knowledge. I wanted to know how to do these things that I was not quite yet ready to do. Yeah. But I wanted the knowledge, and I took the class and I got the knowledge, but I continued drinking and I didn't get sober for another 9 months. That's part of the process. Like, you got to have grace for yourself, but you have to be honest with somebody to start.
Yeah. Kristi, that's a great place, I think, to end on. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, for being so open. I think we're probably going to have you back on to actually talk about the NA drink space. This is, since you have a whole store on it, you're also the expert on that. So it just gives us an excuse to have you back for another round. But thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate all that you're doing, especially in, what I would say is ground zero for unhealthy relationships
Yes,
with alcohol.
totally.
You're doing it in the belly of the beast. So, by the way, say this again. If people want to learn more about you, more about the shop, where should they go?
Yep. Mocktail Mommy is my Instagram handle, and my store is called Sober Social. So we're Sober Social Shop on Instagram or sobersocialshop.com on the internet. You guys,
On the World Wide Web.
yeah, my internet presence is like, I haven't had real lot of time to do that because I'm like doing inventory and unboxing and pricing and blah, 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 blah. But it's super cute and pink, and you should check it out. And we have all the best drinks.
And hopefully at some point, maybe there'll be a book that you can get inside the shop called Confessions. We'll see. We'll see. Kristi, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I definitely think it's a good episode when you can both laugh and cry. And we definitely did that right in this episode. So I do want to thank Kristi for being so open and honest. And, I think there's so much you could unpack in that episode. And Kristi and I talked a little offline. And, I think Kristi's on, I don't know exactly where she is in her faith. We talked about it a little bit. And while I generally try to have people who I know are Christians, just because that's kind of the theme of the podcast, I felt like it was important to have Kristi on. I think she would describe herself as spiritual, is what she told me. And she talked about her best friend being a Christian, and I hope that that conversation with her friend and this conversation, wherever she is, helps point her more clearly to Jesus. And I hope it does for you too, because I think if you're listening to this and you're not a Christian, I want there to be people on who are just like you. And so if you're on that journey as well, reach out to me, let me know. I think I said it during the episode that I was finally able to get sober when I shot for Jesus, and I was finally able to get the most fulfilling life when I shot for Jesus and I got everything else thrown in. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. And so if that's you, if you're on, maybe you've tried rehab once like Kristi and you're just like, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. Reach out to me. Listen, there's people who've reached out to me. I had a Zoom the other day with someone who I didn't know. And I'm not this some ivory tower, pie in the sky, high up here guy. If I have time to talk with you and send you an email or do a Zoom or whatnot, I want to do that. Not to get overly spiritual, but there's this refrain that I've written down in my journal and that the Lord has given me is when possible, I want to give it away. Well, what is it? I don't quite know for sure yet. I have this fundraiser I'm trying to do to give copies of the upcoming book away for free to rehab centers. But I also want to give my time as much as possible away. And so if you need help, please reach out. You can go to christianalcoholic.com, and there's a form that you can fill out. And I'd love to hear your story. I do want to thank my audio partner, Life Audio, who, again, saw the benefit and value in this podcast very early on. And there's no way we would be at over 20,000 downloads without them. So go to lifeaudio.com as well to check out some other great podcasts that they have. Love you all. Thank you. We'll see you back here next week.